Hey guys, welcome. Today's training session topic is on relaxing through the edge and piercing the veil. Just let me know on the chat feed that you're here and that you can hear me and you can see me. The connection's okay, and we'll get started. Hey, good to see you. Okay, so relaxing through the edge and piercing the veil. I thought this is a really important topic because it's a real syntax area, and what I mean by that is if you get this right, a lot of other things will fall into place downstream for you. And so if I just turn this music down just a little bit, leave it on the background, which is nice, complemented with the rain in the background. You may have noticed also we're in a new space. This is the new training space, and I've been working tirelessly internally and externally to get to here. And funnily enough, all the problems that we've had leading up to this point technically supposedly weren't about software at all. They were about the internet connection. And so now we're on NBN, which is the big thing in Australia. It's the high speed stuff, and we're on the unlimited plan, unlimited speeds, unlimited uploads, unlimited downloads. It's just unlimited. So we shouldn't have any more problems. And if that's the case, we can really get into the good stuff now without any interruptions. So before we get into all the tools and techniques and where we can go and what we can do and the types of entities we can commune with and all that sort of stuff, and you know, hacking the system of the dream world, the virtual reality simulation matrix that we may or may not be living in, the key to all of this is relaxation. And I know we've all heard this before, relaxing, everyone's relaxed, but I'm talking really relaxed as a skill, because when we get out there beyond the edges, you're going to be confronted with internal stuff, your traumas are going to come up, injuries are going to come up, relationship issues, financial issues. It's when you start to jump through timelines and your reality starts to warp and flux around you, the knee-jerk reaction is to tense up and to pull out and to withdraw or pull the eject button. And of course, once you do that, the plane's going down. You may survive, but the plane's going to crash and you have to go all the way back to the drawing board and start all over again in terms of the vehicle that you're using to get there. So being cool and calm and collected in those times is a real skill. And just like the Tag Watch slogan goes, you don't want to crack under pressure, because if you can relax through it, relax through that edge, you'll pierce the veil. And once you get through there, incredible things can start to happen instantly and over time, through time. And so to give you a story frame metaphor to look at this process through and the type of levels I'm talking about, because I don't want to use hype and super this and amazing that and, you know, love and light sort of talk, because it gets a bit stale in my mind, and we move out of the real stuff and the technical side of things and what's possible, and exchange it for some fluffy, touchy-feely, nice feeling sort of thing, which is fine. It's all good. We want to feel that way, but when we're really getting into the advanced levels, it's not all touchy-feely and feels good all the time. When you get those as gifts from the divine, you ride those as best you can. It's like surfing on a beautiful day when the weather's perfect and the waves are just beautiful, and you can't plan that. That stuff just happens and you're there to experience it. But in the meantime, you know, the days where the waves are trying to drown you and the weather's crap and there's tides and currents and it's choppy and the sun's trying to fry your skin and all that sort of stuff. So you need to be prepared for all this. And so the metaphor, the story that I'm going to talk about to set the stage for this is there was an old film, I think it was back in the 80s or the 70s. It was called The Right Stuff. And it was about the American space program and when the space race, basically, and how they were taking pilots from all these different fields and putting them into an experimental program to strap them into this tin can on the end of a rocket and shoot them into space, and hopefully they would be able to bring them back alive and in one piece. But the stakes are really high because no one had ever done it before in our recorded history. No one knew if it could be done. They didn't even know what to be testing and training them for exactly. And the pilots, you know, they had to be this kind of cavalier, throw caution to the wind kind of attitude, because there was a high probability that they would die. Okay, so in one of the scenes in the film, one of the pilots who was, I don't think he was actually selected for the astronaut program, but he was a test pilot to do a lot of testing for parts of components in experimental planes that would go into the rockets and would go into the astronaut. So he was in probably just as much a dangerous situation, if not more, because he was testing the stuff before it went into the space program. And so his thing was trying to fly planes as high as they could go and as fast as they could go. And of course, they kept coming up against the sound barrier. And until then, no one had broken it, or there was talks that maybe the Russians had broken it. And if they'd done it, then the Americans had to do it, because if they didn't, then, it could mean the end of the freedom dream lifestyle that everyone knew about. And so what you saw throughout the movie, and there were several scenes of this, is he would be pushing the throttle, and as he got right up to that sound barrier, it's like 1,000 miles an hour or something like that, the whole plane would start to vibrate and shake so violently, and at that speed and at that height, if anything broke, it pretty much meant you're done. So of course, the first few times when he got up to that edge, he would back it off and slow down, and then he'd land the plane, and thank God that we made it through that scene. And throughout the story, he was assessing, is it worth piercing the veil, being the fastest man alive, the first one to do it, and to break that ground for humanity? Or, do I back it off and live the life that I have, and, have a family, raise kids, and die an old man? And am I okay? Will I look back and will I be okay with never having pierced that veil, never having gone beyond that edge? And so these are the mind games that will come up. This is the chatter that you're going to come up, that's going to come up in your mind when you come up against these edges. And not everyone's going to be trying to break the speed, being the fastest man alive, break the sound barrier for the first time ever. But, it can mean all sorts of little things in your life. It can mean how you show up with your family. It can mean how you show up with your boss or your employees, how you conduct your business, where you live, how you live, whether you speak your mind when you know you should, where you follow your intuition when it doesn't make sense. All these things are going to be thrown at you, and that's the edge. And, we all want to be that brave soul, that experimental test pilot that pierces that veil for the first time, and everyone, knows about them, and they go down in history. But what you don't hear much about is all the people that, failed getting there, and how difficult that is. And to really, truly go through all that and break those veils can really push you right to your edge and beyond. And so that's what today's topic is all about. And so how do we do that? Okay, well, first thing is, if our goal is to, like in the metaphor, break the sound barrier, then there's a lot of preparation to get up to that level, and there's a lot of edges to go beyond before you get there. And so we want to get into a habit of being able to identify the edge, reflect on ourselves of how we're responding in that situation, mentally, emotionally, physically, energetically, are the four main areas that I think about. Take note of what's going on there. And sometimes it's not about breaking the edge that time. Maybe you come back like in the story, and you assess things and you weigh it up and you work it out and you deal with your emotions before you go up the next time. And so one of the things that we used to do in the group classes back in Melbourne and wherever I was with whoever I was working with at the time, sometimes they'd just be spontaneous moments that we'd come up against an edge and we'd go, okay, well, this is an edge. Do you want to go through it? Or do you want to try and see if we can get through this? And are you ready? And sometimes the answer would be, no, I'm not ready. I need to work on this and that and the other, and that's fine. But most of the answers were, yeah, let's do this. And whether we knew what we were getting into or not at the time. And so one of the examples that comes to mind was a young guy I was working with who was very physically fit. He was a big guy. He was a good-looking guy, like one of those people that everyone sort of steps aside and lets him go through to the front of the queue, and a real alpha, let's put it that way. And so he'd spent his whole life projecting this image of being an alpha, and for the most part, it got him, you know, through all these areas and into all these great situations that most of us would, you know, dream about having those experiences. But underneath, he was really anxious. And, you know, one of the other problems that comes up when you're the alpha dog in the room is that every other alpha or every other beta male in the room wants to try and knock you off your perch, whether you're there for that or not. Sometimes he'd just turn up trying to have a good time, and he'd come up against resistance from external situations. So one of the things that he had was a lot of anxiety about confronting his fears, his edges, because he never really had the opportunity in groups to be able to do that, because it was very competitive. You know, it's a very competitive male environment. If any of you understand that, I don't really have to talk too much about that. But when we worked together, he felt safe enough to say to me, look, I've always had this fear of heights. And so it's stopping me from, you know, getting into things like skydiving and, you know, bungee jumping, or, you know, just exploring rock climbing and things like that, which I've always loved to do. And I've got plenty of invites to do from all these amazing people, but I've always made an excuse and declined. And he was really good at making excuses and avoiding those edges. One day he just got sick of it. He was like, I've had enough of this crap, you know, I've got to break through, but I'm not sure what to do. And so at the time we were, my company was having a annual general meeting, and we hired this beautiful big beach house. It was like a big party house, and it was in the shape of a U, and it had a beautiful pool in the center in the backyard, and then it was all walled in. It was very private, and we were jumping in and out of the pool and having a good time as a group the whole day. And on the wall there, the retaining wall was only about 5 foot high towards the deep end of the pool. A couple of us just started getting up there and jumping off into the pool. We were having a great time and didn't really think anything of it, but he was saying, hey, look, I'd love to join in, but I'm really nervous. I'm really scared. That's really high for me. And we're like, oh, really? That's okay. Well, it's not a big deal, because, you know, we were also telling stories about how, you know, the guys we jumped off this and, you know, that height, and, you know, where I was, you could see New Zealand and it was that high, and you couldn't see the water, and it was like concrete when you hit it, you know, all the macho stuff. And so he couldn't participate in it, so he would just withdraw and get all anxious in the corner, and no one would know what was going on. But he felt safe enough to come to me and say, this is the situation and I want to go beyond. I've had enough of avoiding all these opportunities. I know where the edge is. I've looked at it 1,000 times. I've bowed out respectfully many times, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities because I didn't take the opportunity to go beyond the edge, because I was afraid that if I failed, then my image would be gone, But he got to the point where he's like, I've had enough of that image as well. There's good things about it, but there's bad things about it. And ultimately, no one actually knows who I am underneath this image. Everyone just knows me as the image. And so he saw through that veil completely, but he just couldn't manage to get beyond it. So we started saying things like, hey, okay, look, instead of getting up there and powering through and pretending you're not afraid, let's just dimensionalize for a second. Let's put ourselves in there mentally up on that edge, not jumping in anywhere, just mentally go there and put yourself on the edge in a place of safety and feel what it feels like. And so he went up on the wall in his mind. He was sitting down on the ground, went up on the wall in his mind, stood on the edge in his mind, and just looked at what it might feel like and see what it might look like if he was standing up on that wall ready to jump in. And while he was sitting down in the chair, visualizing himself, dimensionalizing himself, being up there, rehearsing the movement of just being up on the edge, not even jumping, you could see the tone, skin tone started to change. He started to get anxious. His shoulders started coming up. He started to breathe really short. He started to get real antsy in the chair, like, he had ants crawling over him. And I said, okay, well, stop, relax, come out, breathe, relax. Now start to recenter yourself. Breathe and relax. Realign that energy. Come back to neutral. Realize that you're not actually there, that all of this is happening in your mind. And your mind is creating these emotions in your body. And the body doesn't know the difference between the real world and the imagined world. And just relax and let the body start to calm down. And so we did that and repeated that several times, in and out, in and out, in and out, until finally his emotions started to balance and he became neutral. And in his mind, he could go there and come back, and there was nothing. There was no charge, no energetic charge. And it was just nice and calm. And this took, took a good half an hour, an hour. Okay, this takes a little bit of time to work through, but let's see the value in taking the time to do this. And then so he started to feel calm, like that was normal. It's like over here, you see all the weights behind me. You don't go up and start on the big weight straight away. You come all the way down and you pick up the small weight, and you get used to the movement until the body gets trained into that experience and it becomes normal and there's no charge, just something that you do. And then we said, okay, well, now let's stand up with your back against the wall, looking at the pool. And now while you're standing, put yourself in that position above yourself in your mind and look and see yourself jumping in. And once again, the charge came up because we've gone up a weight now. Gone a little bit heavier. And so there was more charge to deal with. So working on the emotional charge, relaxing, getting the mind used to the idea that that's what the body's going to do, getting the body in a place where it can be relaxed doing it. That's a real key, guys, because when you have mastered this next movement, this next level in your life, when you've mastered it, it's not something you're going to have to push yourself to do. It's not something you're going to have to psych yourself up to do. It's going to be something that is just your new normal. The parkour guys that I used to train with, we'd say it was casual. You'd be casual about it because we'd say it's like taking a shit. It's like no big deal. You just go take a shit. No one's, you don't psych yourself up to go take a shit, right? So you want to be in this position where you know where your normal is, you know where your balanced state is, and you work in there and work in there and work in there and work in there until that becomes easy, becomes effortless, becomes normal. And then you go up to the next level and you work in there. What I see a lot of people doing is they skip. They go, oh, that's easy. I know how to do that. That's easy. Oh, what's next? This one? Yeah, and that next. And then they get to here and they go freak out and they realize they haven't learned all the basics. They haven't learned all the techniques. They haven't worked out all the little nuances, and they've skipped and cut corners, and then they get to here and they see that and they go, there's no fucking way I'm going to be able to do that. And so then they come back to here and then they've got to deal with embarrassment, humiliation, self-delusion, you know, all these things. And rather than do it that way, it's easier just to go here, 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 here. And then one day the body goes, actually, today we can do this one. And you go, that's cool. You do that day, and then you come back and then you go to here. Isn't it making sense? And so eventually we got him up sitting on the wall. And then, I mean, it's only 5 feet and then into the pool, which was 6 feet deep. So all up, it's about 11 feet with halfway is water. And so he's sitting on the wall now, visualizing himself doing it, feeling the emotions, rehearsing in his mind, getting relaxed, getting comfortable. Hasn't jumped in yet. And then we bring him down onto the level and then just get him to jump in and out of the water several times and then get back up on the wall, then come down and jump in the water, come back up on the wall. And then once he's comfortable with that, then we get him to stand up on the wall and then sit down and then back in the water and then back out and then sit up on the wall and then stand up on the wall until standing on the wall feels relaxed. And then he gets to the point where he's just like, I'm bored of this. I'm just going to jump in. And that's the moment that we've been waiting for. It's like, okay, you're ready to jump in now. You really? You sure? Oh, actually not quite ready yet. Okay, no problem. Come back to sit down on the wall. Now, can you jump off the wall while sitting on the wall? Push yourself off the wall into the water, because there was only a little ledge like that. Just got to get over the edge, over the ledge, and into the water, and you'll be fine. And then he eventually worked up to doing that. He's like, okay, that's not so bad. I'm nice and balanced. I'm nice and discharged. Now I'm going to stand up on the wall. And here's where the rubber meets the road, because this is where you get up to here, so to speak. And, you know, it's almost like you've cut yourself off from all the rest behind you, and you've only got this to work with now, and it gets really intense. Okay, so you're like, okay, I've sort of got no choice because all this is just too easy now. So you get to here, and this is where you really have to do your work. He's standing on the edge. He's looking into the water. All this emotion's coming up. And this is where he has to find the quiet space. Everything's shaking around him. His energy's fluxing, is going bananas. His body's convulsing and kicking. His mind is going, get off the wall. You can't do this. Blah, 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 blah. Shouting at him, right? Inside, he's just freaking out. Outside, he's just like, okay, stiff, scared stiff. And I say to him, find your balance. If you can, eyes open, eyes closed, it doesn't matter. Relax, breathe, focus in on your heartbeat, focus in on the spaces between the beats. Breathe and relax. Get ahead of your breathing. Bring your attention into your heart. Feel it slowing down. Feel it calming down. And when you're ready, only when you're ready, in the still moments in between your breathing, there's one. There's another one. Discharging your energy at the same time. Coming back to center over and over again. Training that neutral space into your body. Only when you're ready, in the still moment, jump. But don't do it until you're really ready. Don't convince yourself you're ready. Don't tell yourself you're ready. Don't psych yourself up that you're ready. Just wait until your body tells you it's ready, and then let it jump. And so, you can guess the rest of the story there. He found the still moment, he jumped. Was it a good jump? Did he make a big splash? Was it a splashless entry? Did he do a triple pike? Who cares? He jumped, he landed in the water, he came up. It was the biggest thing in his life. He screamed with undulation, delight, couldn't believe that he did it, broke the barrier in that moment. And he was shaking, his body was shaking, all that energy just started leaving his body, all that trapped energy started going out into his field, reorganizing his reality, reshaping his field. And you could see the smile on his face. It was like a little kid. Went all the way back in the timeline to when that program, being the alpha dog, having to walk around with his chest out all the time and pretend his fears and his edges weren't there, and to distract people and manage people's feelings and thoughts so he didn't get exposed. He went back all the way back to when that program started, and he saw this little kid's face come out of this grown alpha dog man. It was incredible. And I said, while you're still there, get up right now, do it again. And he got back up on there, stood up there, shook a little bit, found the center, and he jumped again. And I came out and I said, do it again, and do it again. He did it 2, 3, 4, 5 times, convinced his brain it wasn't a fluke, told himself, even if tomorrow I'm a bit nervous about it, I've done it, and I've done it over and over. I know I can do it. It's done. And so what are the ramifications of that? Can you imagine? Test pilot pulls the throttle through all the way, come hell or high water, death do us part, we're going for this. Goes straight through, breaks the sound barrier. You know what happens when you break the sound barrier? Everything went still. All the violent shaking stopped. All that rushing of speed, that feeling of it just went calm. It was a bit like, you know, when you take a flight, domestic flight, now you look out the window, everything just looks like it's standing still. And that's what it feels like to break that edge, pierce that veil. And of course, you know, they break the sound barrier, now they know they can do it. They know how to strengthen the plane. They know how to make planes to go faster and faster now. They know how to make rockets. They know how to make space shuttles. They can make space stations now. They've got satellites going off into the distant galaxies. Now you've got businessmen like Elon Musk making his own rockets based on the technology that was developed way back then, with a mission to go to Mars in the next 10, 15, 20 years, colonize Mars. Can you see the ripple effect of breaking an edge? You can't actually. You can't really see it. You can see a fair way down the path, but you can't see all the way. And one thing you can't see is how it affects the lives of other people when you break through that edge. And they look at you and go, it's possible. The 4-minute mile. Impossible. Couldn't be done. First man does it. Unlocks consciousness for humankind. It is possible. It can be done. What happens in the next year? 10, 20 people do it. Now people do it all the time. It's now become a standard. So, when you find your edges, write them down. Make a note of where the edge is, because that's where the work is, guys. It's not about pretending you're having a great time all the time or life's wonderful all the time, because it's not. You know, it's just not. Sometimes it's crap, sometimes it's hard, sometimes you don't think you're going to get through. Sometimes you think life's going to tear you to pieces going through those edges. It's just how it is. So once again, your ability to relax through those edges, so important. Can you imagine, put yourself in that place of that test pilot going through the sound barrier the first time. He's in the plane. No one's ever gone that fast before. No one's ever flown that high before. He's so far away from help that by the time help gets there, it's too late. So far out in the unknown. So far out in the unknown, you're on your own. And so every little movement, every little adjustment has to be on point in that situation. The margin for error is minuscule. And so you have to sort of get to that point where you're at the edge and it's like, well, today's a good day to die. But to get there, you have to be okay with it. You have to be okay. You have to not be like, well, life's crap and my marriage doesn't work and my business isn't profitable and my kids hate me and rah, so yeah, let's screw it. Let's just push the throttle through. That's a recipe for disaster. And from what I understand, what my experience is when you have everything sorted out as best you possibly can, you've done everything you can that's in your control, you've accepted what you can't control, and you get to that point where you go, you know what, life's pretty damn good in all of its ups and downs. It's forged me into someone I can respect, and I can look in the mirror and I can say, I really like you. Actually, I love you. And I'm okay to let all this go because I've lived it fully. I've turned every rock. I've turned every stone. I've looked through every dark alley, all the dead ends as best I can. I've done everything I can. And what is for me now is beyond that edge. I'm ready for that edge, really ready. It's like the film Gattaca. If you've seen Gattaca with Ethan Hawke, one of my favourite films. Goes through this massive ordeal to become an astronaut in the future, in a world of genoism where people are genetically engineered for specific tasks, and if you don't have the genes, you don't get the job. Doesn't matter what your attitude is, what your ability is. And so what he does is he ends up assuming an identity of someone who has the genes that he does not have. And they call it a borrowed ladder. And he goes through all these tests, and he is so convincing that no one realizes that he's a borrowed ladder. And not only that, despite his genetic shortcomings in that world, he goes to the top of the class anyway. And he gets to the point where he's about to go on his first mission around Jupiter and leave the planet for 10 years. It means once he's on that shuttle, once it takes off, it doesn't matter if they find out who he is. He's on board. He has to figure it out. And he said, you know, for a world that suppressed me and put me down for my genetic inheritance or something of that manner, he said, I'm having a hard time leaving it. And so it's a really powerful scene where he's achieved what he wanted to achieve. It's done. And it's almost to the point where it wouldn't have mattered if people caught him and didn't let him get on the shuttle. He'd have been okay because he would have shown himself and embodied that new identity to be able to do it anyway. And he'd sort of mastered the game at the level that he was at, and there was nothing left for him to do but to go on. And that's really, you know, that's the kind of state of mind that I recommend you start to cultivate when approaching these edges. And it's not about racking them up like notches on your belt and, you know, going into these seminars and workshops and bragging about your achievements. You know, how many trophies you have on the spiritual wall. Because it's endless. You know, no matter where you get to, there's always more. And even if there's no one else that's gone beyond, even if you're the one that's gone the furthest, you look into that abyss and you know that there's endless, infinite, more edges to go to. So it doesn't really matter how many trophies you have. And it doesn't even matter whether you go beyond that edge or not. You know, this is more about how do you conduct yourself when you come up against an edge. You know, how do you work through it? How do you turn that into a skill that's duplicable, that can be applied to different things in different scales and different levels? If you're an athlete, we're talking about physical, you'd want to be able to become a polyathlete, someone who is pretty good at everything, maybe specialize in a few things, but you can pick up any kind of sport and you can pretty much do it. So I'm going to pause there and we'll give some time for you guys to chime in if you have any questions, or if you want to want me to go over anything again or talk about anything. Feel free to put them in the chat or ask for a speaking request. I'm quite happy to open it up now for you. But in the meantime, if you want to just spin on those stories a little bit, there's a lot of value in those. Here we go. I have to excuse the noise. My new neighbours are renovating, doing little mods to their space. Hey, Abel. Good. I can't hear you yet.
Well, there we go. Okay.
There we go.
Turn on my microphone.
How's it going, man? Long time no see for both of us.
Pretty good. Yeah, I know we've both been kind of, and just getting through life. This amazing thing we call life. But yeah, I thought your topic tonight was really good, and I think it kind of recapped what I was trying to say on my live the other day. That when you start digging into who you are and the things that you want to accomplish, there's just going to be life is just going to keep coming at you from angles, and you're going to have to figure it out. And that's what I was kind of referring to as a mission impossible. It's never going to end.
I love that you said that, by the way. I thought that was brilliant.
And yeah, I thought it was too. And I didn't know if I conveyed that. I think maybe some people might have not interpreted it that way, but that's what I was trying to get at. And I just thought your topic was good tonight. So
thank you. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, because you're absolutely right.
Sorry, interrupted.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the further you get into this, the more difficult the edges. The bigger the waves, and the more skill you need to be able to, ride them. It's like with in the martial arts circles, as you increase your getting to black belts can be difficult enough in most, circumstances. And when you see resistance everywhere, but when you get into the next levels, like getting your Dan, so to speak, it escalates. Then you got to display competency with weapon disarming and multiple attackers, and the situations just keep getting more and more difficult. And you can look at that and go, oh shit, it's just too hard. Or you can go, well, in order for you to get a reflection of where you're at, you sort of need that difficulty to respond to. Otherwise, it's like we were talking about the weights. If you're up here, red and black, so to speak, and then you go into this level, coming back to here is sort of, it's good for refinement, but it's not a challenge for you, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, if you're getting into life as Mission Impossible, then it's a good reflection of your skill level at the same time, you know?
There's always going to be, test who you are. And it's like, do you want to go back and retreat? Because you know what that door is going to lead. That's the easy path, going back and say, I don't want to deal with that today. It's, that's too difficult. But once you actually deal with that situation that you're confronted with and you bust through that door, it's like, I did that. What's next?
Yeah.
And it's just a good marker for yourself, and to see what you're actually really made of, and you keep on confronting the problems that you're going to come up with and the challenges that you're going to face through life, because it's never going to end.
Yeah. No, it's like the action movies, the villain always gets worse. The world always needs saving in a new way. There's always a new threat, but the hero always responds. And you get to see them go through their journey of how they're going to deal with this one, So, yeah, it's funny. The other thing that I've noticed is that life only gives you what the next edge is. Like, it doesn't give you 7 edges to deal with. You know what I mean? Like, it gives you the next edge, and then you can't progress until you've worked. You can't skip to the next level unless you've done that level. Does that make sense? And so it gives you these.
Yeah.
Once you get through there, there's rewards, but the rewards pale in comparison to the skill you learn and how you deal with things. And like we see in the franchise action movies, the hero evolves. They become, stronger, smarter. They deal with things in new ways each time, unless it's the cheesy Hollywood formula. But there's always new skills that are brought in, new things that get introduced. And so the character just becomes, more and more refined, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. When you decide to jump into that lake, you're causing that ripple effect, like you were saying, and you don't know what that ripple effect is going to do once it reaches that shore. And there's nobody there to throw you a life jacket. You are your own guard, and it's up to you to figure out how to get back to shore. Yeah.
And it's. I mean, I use movie metaphors a lot because when you see them, for me, they have lots of impact. That's why I remember them so much, and they shape my mindset going into these challenges. And in the film Gattaca, I don't know if you've seen it, but he's got
it's been a while.
The main Ethan Hawke's character. He's got this brother who was raised, genetically engineered and was always superior to him, and they would always have this swimming race across the lake, and it was chicken. It was like whoever gave up and decided to turn back lost. And so throughout the whole film, as a kid, as a teenager, he'd lose until one day before he starts his journey, he continues to swim, and then they confront each other as men later on, and he beats him again, and his brother says, how did you do it, Vincent? How did you beat me? And he said, that's we were so far out or something, we'd never make it back. He said, well, that's the thing, I never saved anything for the swim back. So in his mind, he was just prepared to drown out there. He had enough of, being in the shadow of the brother. It was like, I'd rather die today than have to live another day in that old mindset, in that old identity, And that it takes, I don't know, for me it takes something really deep to just put it all on the line. And I'm not saying recklessly like a compulsive gambler would, but there will be. This is what I'm talking about with the edge. It's not just a challenge. It's kind of, it's like you said. You know what that life is. You've been there. You've done that. You've probably done it so many times. You're bored with it, right? And it's like in the Matrix, Neo is in the back of the car. And they're like, take your shirt off, we're going to debug you and all this sort of stuff before we take you off to Morpheus. And he's got this gun on him like he's this threat, and he's like, it's our way or the highway. And he goes, all right, well, fine. And he goes to get out of the car, and Trinity says, wait, you've been down that path, you know exactly where it goes. Do you want to live that life? And he's like, no, not really. I know what's there. It's not a challenge for me anymore. I need to go to that next one. Otherwise, what am I doing here? Sort of thing. Yeah. And I think, if you go to that edge and you really spend time on the edge, before you confront. Because, some people they're like blinders. Just smash through and hope for the best. And I see a lot of people crash and burn that way. And for me, it's becoming so familiar with that edge that there's sort of nothing left to do but to go through, I think that for me, that's a good philosophy to take into your life. And not try and leave behind that life because it's too difficult or you haven't mastered it. Because if you manage to pierce that edge anyway, like if you fluke it, for example, or your body takes over and gets you through it just so it can survive, then you're going to be inundated with everything that's on the other side of that edge that perhaps you weren't really ready for. And so a good metaphor for that is in free diving, where you can push yourself to go deeper and longer, but if your body's not ready for it and you're not conditioned for it, you come back up, you've got the bends, you've got all sorts of problems you have to deal with. There is a cost to cutting corners, there really is, especially when you're talking on spirituality terms. You can't cheat life. Life has its pound of flesh one way or the other.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man.
I know I can see it in your face. I know you've been there. That's the thing.
Yeah. It's scary in the beginning. It's really messy in the middle, but at the end, it's going to be so beautiful. You're like, that's right. And everybody else you're going to bring along with you, it's going to be so beautiful, man. It's just what I'm really excited for, and just impacting so many different people on so many different levels. And there's no turning back.
Yeah.
There's really no turning back.
Yeah. You do get to that point where it's like in Gattaca, he's like swimming, like, Vincent, we have to go back. We're too far out. He says, no, we're closer to the other side. He goes, there is no other side. We're in the ocean, But it's like you're so far out, it doesn't matter anymore. It's, you're beyond. Going back is just as difficult. So you might as well go through. And that's why relaxing in those moments is so important, because if you freak out when you're out in the middle of nowhere, that just does not help you one iota at all. It just shuts your brain down. You can't access your faculties or your abilities, and then, you're really stuffed. So Relaxing is a skill. Yeah,
Yeah.
really is a skill. And the more you can be relaxed in stressful situations, the more you're going to be able to deal with, the more you're going to be able to, more you'll be able to endure, the more pain you'll be able to feel, not that we're, sadists or anything, but sometimes to move through those levels, you need to express the pain you've accumulated. And I saw a really interesting article that said, pain will stay with families through generations until someone is brave enough to feel it. And so, relaxing through your pain is it's a huge skill. I can't stress enough how important of a key it is in doing this work at these types of levels I'm talking about.
Yeah, and in those moments, it's really hard to find that relaxation mode because there's so many thoughts going through your mind, but you really got to find that place that's really centered and find that relaxation spot, because that's what's going to get you to that next level.
Yeah, and like in the metaphor of the pilot, going through the sound barrier, when you're in a domestic charter flight, there's no stress, it's easy to relax. But when you're flying along at supersonic speed and the whole plane is shaking and you've got all these warning lights flashing at you in the mind chatter, the emotions going ballistic, the body just saying, we're going to die here, we're going to die here. To be able to stay calm, relaxed, and go, all right, that's just a warning light, that the shaking will stop, but to know that, not to just, throw yourself into it. That's, like the title of the movie, it's what they call the right stuff, and you can cultivate that if you're willing.
Yeah, there was a few moments where I needed some help, and I called upon you, and you pretty much said, take a deep breath, kick your feet, and move your arms. And I just really appreciate those moments where I had to lean on you, and you gave me some great advice during those times to where I didn't fall back.
Yeah, no problem, man. And but that's all you. That's all you. I didn't relax for you. You did that. But yeah, it's thanks for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. It's just. Yeah, if you can stay on that edge, even if you're not going through the edge, if you can stay there, relax into it and acclimatize, which you've done, it makes it so much easier to reapproach the edge as well. And sometimes it's just about getting comfortable going up there. Like with the pilot, he went up to the edge of the speed of sound several times in the film, and in real life probably did it many, many more times. But, it's not as entertaining that he did it 50 times before he finally broke through, But that's more likely of a story that, it's not like, oh, it was just a brave John Wayne type, and the third try he just decided no. Especially when you get into these piercing the veil programs throughout history that have made such an impact. There were months and months and months, of testing, of retesting, of re-engineering, going back to the drawing board, reworking, scrapping ideas, rebuilding them completely. This is not sexy. It's not what beginners want to hear, but it's the reality of the situation, And so, hats off to you for taking that on and sitting with it, because it's not easy. Believe me, I know it's not easy, but it is simple.
Yeah, it is simple. It's just not easy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up unless you got something you just want to blurt out or a question. And then I think we'll call.
No, that was it. You know, just wanted to chime in. I loved your topic tonight, and it was good.
Thank you.
And until next time.
Until next time, I look forward to seeing you on season 3 of the Able to Do Anything show. Can't wait to see what you come up with.
That's right. You don't want to miss it. We are broadcasting worldwide.
Say that again. Sorry, I missed that.
We'll wait to see you there. Can't wait to see you there, Brett.
Yeah, definitely. Love to. All right, Abel, take it easy. I know you will, and I'll see you in the future. Thanks for watching.
Have a good day out there in Australia. We love you.
Thanks. Bye.